Have you ever said yes when you really wanted to say no? You're not alone. Many of us find it hard to refuse requests, even when it means sacrificing our own time, energy, or happiness. But what if saying no wasn't selfish? What if it was an act of self-care? Saying no is more than just turning down a favor or skipping an event. It's about protecting your mental health, setting boundaries, and honoring your priorities. When we say yes to everything, we risk feeling overwhelmed, resentful, and even disconnected from ourselves. Learning to say no can help us live more balanced and authentic lives. Here's the big question. Can saying no be a way of caring for yourself without hurting others? Philosophers like Aristotle believed in the importance of balance in life. Modern thinkers say that respecting your own needs is key to building healthy relationships. So, how can we learn this skill and use it wisely? In this video, we'll explore why saying no feels so hard, how it can empower us, and how embracing this simple word can transform our lives for the better. Have you ever felt your heart race when someone asks you for a favor, and even though you want to say a no, the word just won't come out? You're not alone. Saying a no can feel like one of the hardest things to do, even though it's just two simple letters. But why is it so difficult? It turns out, a big part of the problem lies in how we're wired as humans. We all want to belong, to feel connected to others. Saying a no can make us worry that we'll upset someone or damage our relationship. Dr. Vanessa Bones, a psychologist, explains that we fear rejection because we value social connection so much. We think that if we say a no, people might stop liking us or leave us out. Then there's the fear of conflict. Imagine saying a no to a friend who asks for help, even though you're already overwhelmed. You might worry they'll get upset or argue with you. This fear often keeps us from expressing what we truly feel, and instead we say yes just to avoid any drama. Another reason is our desire to be liked and seen as helpful. When someone thanks us or praises us for saying yes, it feels good. It's like a little reward for being kind and reliable. But this can also trap us into overcommitting, taking on more than we can handle just to keep getting that approval. For some people, empathy plays a big role too. If you deeply care about others' feelings, it can be hard to turn them down, even if helping them means sacrificing your own time or energy. Being empathetic is wonderful, but it's important to remember that caring for yourself is just as important as caring for others. And let's not forget about cultural expectations. We live in what some experts call a yes culture. People who say yes are often seen as go-getters, hardworking and ambitious individuals who are willing to take on anything that comes their way. But this idea can lead us to believe that saying a no is lazy or selfish, which isn't true at all. In fact, overworking ourselves by saying yes too often can lead to burnout and exhaustion. Interestingly, women often struggle with saying a no more than men do. Society teaches women to be kind and sensitive, always putting others' needs first. This pressure can make it even harder for them to set boundaries and prioritize their own well-being. The consequences of not saying a no are serious. When we keep agreeing to things we don't want or can't handle, it builds up stress and resentment over time. Some people even experience anxiety or depression because they feel trapped in a cycle of overcommitment and guilt. But here's the good news. Learning to say a no isn't about being rude or selfish. It's about respecting your own time and energy while still caring for others in healthy ways. Experts like Professor Vanessa Patrick remind us that saying a no puts you in control of your life. It's empowering because it shows you value yourself enough to set boundaries. So why do toddlers say a no so easily while adults struggle with it? Somewhere along the way, we learned that saying a no might upset others or make us seem unkind. But maybe it's time we unlearn that idea. And now comes the big question. If saying a no is so important for our well-being, how can we do it without feeling guilty? Philosophical perspectives on boundaries. Have you ever thought about what a boundary really is? It's not just a line on a map or a fence between two yards. Boundaries are everywhere. In our relationships, our values, and even the way we think about ourselves. They help us define what's ours and what belongs to others. But boundaries aren't just about keeping things apart. They're also about bringing things together. Philosophers have been exploring this idea for centuries, and their insights can help us understand why boundaries matter so much in our lives. Let's start with Aristotle. He described boundaries as the extremities of things, the point where something ends and something else begins. This might sound simple, but it's actually quite profound. Boundaries help us understand who we are by showing us what we're not. They create a space where we can grow, change, and connect with others, while still protecting what makes us unique. Socrates, one of the most famous philosophers, believed that understanding boundaries was key to understanding ourselves. He asked questions like, what does it mean to be human? And where do we draw the line between right and wrong? These questions remind us that boundaries aren't just physical, they're also moral and emotional. They guide how we treat others and how we expect to be treated in return. Modern philosophers have taken these ideas even further. Joanna Handerick, for example, talks about boundaries as spaces of possibility. She explains that while boundaries separate us from others, they also create opportunities for connection and cooperation. Think about the border between two countries. It can be a place of conflict, but it can also be a place where cultures meet and enrich each other. In relationships, setting boundaries can feel scary at first, but it often leads to deeper trust and respect. Boundaries also play a big role in ethics. For example, when we talk about issues like euthanasia or animal rights, we're really asking, where do we draw the line? What actions are acceptable, and which ones cross the boundary into harm or injustice? These questions show that boundaries aren't fixed. They change depending on our values and perspectives. Here's something interesting. Boundaries don't just divide, they unite. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a fence. The fence separates them, but it also gives them a shared point of reference, a place where they can meet and communicate. This is why philosophers say boundaries are both limits and bridges. They help us understand differences while encouraging connection. Of course, not all boundaries are helpful. Some can be too rigid or unfair, like rules that exclude certain groups of people or ideas that limit creativity. History shows us that boundaries have often been used to divide rather than unite, whether it's through discrimination or conflict. But when boundaries are set with kindness and respect, they can become tools for growth and understanding. So why do boundaries matter so much? Because they shape how we see ourselves and others. They remind us that while we're all different, those differences don't have to keep us apart. Instead, they can help us build stronger relationships based on mutual respect. The first step to saying a no is understanding that it's okay to say it. Many of us feel guilty when we refuse someone, as if we're letting them down or being selfish. But think about this. Every time you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're saying a no to something else, maybe your own needs or priorities. Saying a no isn't selfish. It's a way of honoring your boundaries and making space for what really matters. So how can we say a no without feeling bad? One simple way is to be honest and direct. For example, if someone asks you for help and you can't do it, you might say, I'm sorry, I can't right now. Being clear avoids confusion and shows that while you respect their request, you're also respecting your own limits. Another tip is to keep it simple. You don't need to explain every detail or make excuses. A straightforward response like I'm not available that day is enough. Over-explaining can weaken your position and leave room for negotiation, which might make it harder for you to stick to your decision. Using I statements can also help. Instead of saying something like you always ask too much of me, which might sound blaming, try saying I have other commitments. This shifts the focus to your needs without making the other person feel criticized. Sometimes people might push back after hearing you're a no. In these cases, staying firm is important. If they keep asking, you can politely repeat yourself. I understand you're disappointed, but my answer hasn't changed. This shows that while you empathize with their feelings, you're sticking to your decision. Expressing gratitude is another great strategy. If someone invites you to an event or asks for help, thank them for thinking of you, even if you have to decline. For example, you could say, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored, but I won't be able to make it this time. Gratitude softens the refusal and leaves the door open for future opportunities. If possible, offering an alternative can be helpful too. Let's say a friend asks for help moving furniture, but you're busy that day. You might suggest another person who could help or offer advice on how they could manage without you. This shows that even though you're saying a no, you still care about their situation. Reflecting on past experiences can also strengthen your ability to say a no. Think about times when refusing a request allowed you to focus on something, maybe spending time with family or finishing a big project. Remembering these positive outcomes can remind you why setting boundaries is worth it. Practicing saying a no is key. The more often you do it, the easier it becomes. Start small, maybe decline a minor request, and gradually work up to bigger ones. Over time, saying a no will feel less uncomfortable and more natural. Another helpful tip is preparing responses ahead of time. If there are situations where people often ask too much of you, like at work or in social settings, think about what you'll say before they ask. Having a plan makes it easier to respond confidently. It's also important to remember that not every request deserves a detailed explanation. Sometimes a simple decline works best. Sadly, I have something else going on, or I wish I could help, but I can't right now. These responses are polite but firm. They get the point across without inviting further discussion. Learning how to say no doesn't mean shutting people out or being rude. It's about finding balance between helping others and taking care of yourself. When done respectfully and thoughtfully, saying no can actually strengthen relationships because it builds trust and honesty. The first step in transforming guilt is understanding it. Guilt often comes from a sense of responsibility, feeling like we've hurt someone or failed to meet expectations. But not all guilt is fair. Sometimes we feel guilty for things that are out of our control or because someone else made us feel that way. Recognizing where your guilt comes from is important because it helps you figure out whether it's something you need to act on or let go of. Once you understand your guilt, the next step is to accept it. It's okay to feel guilty. It means you care about doing the right thing. But instead of letting guilt overwhelm you, try to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. For example, if you feel guilty about forgetting a friend's birthday, think about how you can do better next time. Maybe by setting reminders or planning ahead. Another way to deal with guilt is through self-compassion. Imagine how you'd comfort a friend who feels bad about making a mistake. You wouldn't tell them they're terrible or selfish. You'd remind them that everyone makes mistakes and that they're still a good person. Treat yourself the same way. Be kind and patient with yourself, even when things don't go as planned. Sometimes guilt comes from hurting someone else, even if it wasn't intentional. In these cases, apologizing can be powerful. A heartfelt "I'm sorry" shows the other person that you care about their feelings and want to make things right. But remember, an apology isn't just words, it's also actions. Think about how you can fix the situation or rebuild trust with the person you hurt. If your guilt feels overwhelming, it might be because you're taking on too much responsibility. This often happens when we don't set clear boundaries with others, like saying yes to every request or trying to solve everyone's problems. Learning to set boundaries can help reduce guilt by showing others what you're able to do and what you're not. For example, if a coworker asks for help but you're already busy, saying "I can't right now" lets them know your limits while still being respectful. Sometimes we feel guilty about things we can't change, like events from the past or situations beyond our control. In these moments, it's important to remind yourself that holding on to guilt won't fix anything. Instead, focus on what you can do moving forward. Maybe that means learning from your mistakes or finding ways to help others in similar situations. Mistakes are a natural part of life, and they don't define who we are. They teach us how to grow. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, ask yourself, what did I learn? How can I make better choices next time? Reframing mistakes as learning opportunities turns guilt into something constructive. If dealing with guilt feels too hard on your own, don't be afraid to ask for help. Talking to a trusted friend or family member can give you a fresh perspective on your feelings. Therapy is another great option. It offers tools and strategies for managing guilt in healthy ways. Transforming guilt into empowerment isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about facing them with courage and kindness. When you stop seeing guilt as a punishment and start seeing it as a chance to grow, it becomes less scary and more manageable. No is just a small word, but it carries immense power. Throughout this journey, we've learned that saying a no isn't selfish. It's essential for living a balanced and fulfilling life. Setting boundaries allows us to protect our time, energy, and values while maintaining healthy relationships with others. It's not about rejecting people. It's about choosing what truly matters to us. When we say a no, we're not closing doors, we're opening new ones. By prioritizing our own needs, we create space for the things that bring us joy, purpose, and peace. Saying a no can be challenging at first, especially when guilt tries to creep in. But as we've explored, guilt can be transformed into empowerment when we embrace self-compassion and focus on growth. Imagine this: a serene individual confidently declining a request, not out of anger or frustration, but with kindness and clarity. They understand their priorities and respect their boundaries. This is the power of saying a no. It's a skill that takes practice but leads to freedom and self-respect. Now it's your turn. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Where can you say a no to make room for what truly matters? Remember, every no is an opportunity to say yourself and your values.